Hi, this is Doug Howard from Growth Team Strategies, and I'm here today with another episode of Selling the Dream. I'm here, first of all, with my illustrious co-host, Kathi Fleck from down in Texas. Kathi, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Doug. It's nice and warm here.
See, it's always warmer there than it is here, so that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah, and so we're also joined today by a really good friend, business owner, and someone that works with us on a number of things, Matt Helminiak. Matt, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Great to have you here. So one of the things that we all have in common, right, is we've all been through this journey of owning a business, building a business, and selling a business. And, I think there's so many different paths that this can take and so many different things that people can do ahead of time to prepare. I was just talking to an organization today that said they literally have thousands of members and almost no discussions going on about what we're going to do with these businesses as the business owners continue to get older. The industry continues to consolidate, and, they're headed down a path of saying, you really need to figure this stuff out before you get to this jumping off point. Then we also sometimes hear from folks that say, listen, I'm thinking about selling my business. And we say, okay, well, when are you thinking about? And they're like, by next Tuesday would be excellent. They wait right till the edge, and then they get almost business claustrophobic. So we love to talk about different people's experiences and really some of the lessons that I'll learn, because you learn a lot after you're all said and done, right? When all the hoopla dies, all the papers are signed, you have whatever money you're going to have. Like I always say, like you really get one chance to make a last impression, whatever that lasting thing is. It's what your business generated. It's what your legacy was. It's what you kind of walk out as you take that last box out of the office. But there's so much that can be done to impact that ahead of time. So we really enjoy having those conversations. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your experience was in business, what business you sold, and just a little bit in general about that process. And then we'll dig in with the really tough questions, right, Kathi? So be thinking of some really tough questions. Okay.
So in my case, I worked for a family business. My dad started an insulation company in 1970. My sister and I grew up in the business. We both worked there all throughout grade school, high school. My parents convinced the school bus to drop us off at the front of the building at the end of the day. So we were there every day as we were kids. Once I started working there as an adult, about maybe 7 or 8 years after I started full time, we did a roll up, combined our company with a handful of other companies that we had partnered with. We did a buying group first. So we were separately owned companies, bought centrally through one location. And then that benefited us because you get volume discounts on insulation that are extremely helpful when you're buying in large volumes. Tractor trailer loads, like my location would be 2 or 3 tractor trailer loads of material every day. So you combine that, we were buying hundreds of trailers a month. So we had a buying group. Then people started approaching us with businesses, and we added businesses to our little buying group. And that made us eventually, I think we were in 14 different states. We were approached by some private equity guys to have our little business roll up and then sell to private equity. In our case, we made it all the way through due diligence and got an offer that we didn't like and walked away, and then started the whole process over a second time with a different investment banking group. And then that generated a sale, finalized about 2004. It was a Midwestern, an outfit out of Chicago. And then I stayed on as a manager of a couple different locations after the sale. So have been through it as a single location, multi-location, and then as a back to running 1 or 2 locations of a giant multi-state conglomerate.
Wow. So a lot of complexity there. So Matt, when you first started the process, were you looking to sell, or was it something where they just approached you and it was worth taking a look at?
In our case, there was my dad and a couple of the other owners were all at that same age. They were in their early 60s and were thinking about, what do we do with this? Right. And if you pass it on to your kids, you're not really going to have that exit. So the businesses had achieved a pretty significant size. So they were looking for some kind of exit and a continuing legacy that they could have something that people could stay working at if they wanted to. So we were approached by people from the outside.
Gotcha.
Did you have any interest of buying it yourself or buying a portion of it?
There's no way I could have afforded it.
Oh.
I loved the business and stayed working there, but the dollar volume that one of these businesses was worth at the time was not something that I would ever have entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, Matt, when you got through that process the first time and didn't go forward, right? How hard was that? I mean, it's got to be hard. When you've got an offer on the table, you don't really know, you go through whatever, investigation basically, right? Everybody's looking at everything. You get closer, right? So you start to envision what life looks like as you're getting to the other side. What was that like, and how hard was it to take a step back and go, this just isn't right for us?
In my case, I mentally prepared myself for it not happening. So I was not like, oh, this is going to go through. We're going to get a sizable amount of money. This is going to be great. I thought it would be nice if it happens, and I'm prepared if it doesn't. So I never was on the side of like, we put this much time into it that throwing good money after bad, like going through with something that you probably should have gotten rid of, the sunk cost fallacy. I was never part of that, but it was hard because it's a significant amount of money that they offered. It wasn't like it was nothing, but it was a lot less than we thought it would be worth. Because when we were initially talking, it was to an inside the industry other buyer. So it was a larger insulation company that wanted to buy us to make themselves bigger. And we had been given some advice that said that somebody outside of our industry would be a better buyer because they could offer us more. So we ended up turning down that deal and then going with somebody that was not part of the industry. It was just an investment banking group and did a lot better. But it's a gamble because you turn down a sure thing hoping that better off is down the road. So it turned out it was a good gamble, but it certainly was a gamble.
So how
Kathi,
did
you had some of that, right? With some of, when you went through your business.
Yeah. With the actual owner, we were supposed to close right before Christmas of 21. And so it really was a help to close the business at the end of the year, tax purposes, some personal issues and that. And then got a call that they didn't like the banker, and so that they were going to go find another banker. So a 3-month process turned into a 6-month process. And, emotionally, you're still trying to hold on and keep it going and still not sure if it's going to work. And we also considered maybe moving to another potential buyer versus the one who was going to renegotiate with a different bank. But then we just felt that he was still serious and it would be worth our while just to stick with it. So it did take another 3.5 months or so before we could get that finished.
Yeah. It is a little bit challenging though, because like you said, man, you don't know what's going to come next, right? What's going to be there. And I've had people that have had deals that have fallen apart, and 6 months, a year, 2 years later, the business they have to sell has maybe experienced some changes, some new competition, or something that's changed in the economy, or something that says, was that the high water mark? And, should that have been the moment we acted? Right? So there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, through the whole process. Plus, most people haven't been through the process repeatedly. Right? Most people that build a business that's been their life's work, it's not like buying and selling businesses is something they even have familiarity with. We talk about that a lot in the remodeling industry, right? People don't do big home remodels, multiple times usually in their lifetime. And so, so what kind of advisors did you guys lean on, Matt, when you went through your process?
In our case, it was an investment banking group out of Chicago. I don't even think they're still around, but it was a group out of Chicago that put a deal together. The funding actually came from a family office that I think was S.C. Johnson Wax family money, and they were the main funder of the deal. But they had other people involved in the deal. But it was a Chicago investment banking group, which for us fit our style a whole lot better. So the different regions tend to have different personalities when it comes to what kind of deals they do. We liked the Chicago style people because they were much more in the kind of Warren Buffett style of, we want to get to know your business and we want to run a business in your industry. We're not buying you for your revenue. We're buying you for your business. Versus the New York, New Jersey style investment bankers that you're just a number and a multiple of a number is what they care about, not the business itself. So we felt much more comfortable with the second group that we ended up talking to, just because it was more of a Chicago style.
Yeah, I like that in pizza as well. The Chicago style is also, but that's a different podcast. So. Yeah, but I think it's really important because that connection, right? And Kathi, we've talked about it. We've had Paula on as a guest, and that connection and the people you're working with as you're going through this process is really important because there's an awful lot of trust and faith, as you're taking these steps and getting feedback and should I or shouldn't I, or just the emotions of it, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, you had several different owners, I'm going to say. So how did they all decide to work on this, and how long did it take to really get it going?
Luckily for me, I was way down on the ownership table, so I didn't have to lead anything. But it was, I think all total, we had over 20 stockholders that had some piece of things of various sizes. The 5 majority stockholders, the guys that were the ones who originally founded the businesses, they worked it out amongst themselves. I was mostly along for the ride for that part of it. But it was a lot of jockeying because each individual business was run kind of independently. So how our business values were calculated and our share of the overall pie, there was a lot of recasting of earnings and moving depreciation from this column to that column. There was a lot of jockeying for position early on. But our philosophy was we went in being very trusting and figuring that no matter what happens, we're going to end up with a pretty good deal. So whether it's 7.2% or 7.5%, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's not worth ruining the relationship that we had with all these other partners over a tenth of a percent one way or the other.
Did you get the business valued at some point before you decided to sell, or how did you come up with the number that you wanted?
It was part of the discussions with the investment banking group. Was once they started casting and looking at things and figuring out our business value, then the multiples. We knew kind of where we might get, but until somebody actually made the offer, we didn't know what we could get. And this was before roll-ups were the hot trend. The roll-up and exit thing that is the cool thing to do now in MBA schools was not a thing back then. So we really didn't have a whole lot of benchmarking on what we were going to be able to get out of it. We were kind of early in on the trend. So we didn't know what we were going to get. We had a hope of what we would get, but we had no way to really know because there was nothing that we could point to for history.
Okay. So Matt, when you use that term roll up, what do you mean by that? Because not everybody's that familiar with.
So it's the cool hot thing to do now for MBA kids to get out of MBA school and want to do a roll up. And so what it basically means is you go and take a whole bunch of similar businesses that are separately owned and run, and you roll them up into a single business and combine it and make a conglomerate. With the hope being that there's either some sort of volume advantage in your cost structure, so you're buying more of whatever product you buy and you get a discount there, or you can eliminate some of the back office and combine your payroll. Instead of having it be done at every single location, one central place is calculating payroll, or your insurance is being run centrally. You get a much better deal on health insurance. There's a lot of advantages to being bigger. It also enabled us to hire a professional CEO and a professional headquarters. So a lot of us were little insulation companies making it up as we go. We were able to hire a real professional, experienced CEO that built a corporate office in Minneapolis and stacked it with really good people that knew a corporate level HR stuff. Like, how do you run a multi-state company with all sorts of different state labor laws and federal laws? Just the Department of Transportation compliance is so complex when you're running a multi-state company. Hiring people that knew how all that stuff worked, being able to afford professionals instead of winging it and doing it ourselves. you end up saving yourself a fortune in DOT fines and OSHA fines and all the other agencies that will fine you for doing it wrong when you have professionals running a business. It's a very different to run a small little location and run a national company. And they're the back office of those two things look almost nothing alike. They might have the same title, but what they're doing is so different.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I think, Matt, this was super interesting. I know there's more to discuss, and we're going to have you on again. I think, Kathi, you're going to continue the conversation with Matt, and so it'll be exciting to hear what you guys explore. But, I think it's interesting because we all had very different organizations, very different circumstances. And at the end of the day, some of the challenges and some of the things that people should be thinking about, regardless of what business they're in, I think has a lot of similarities. So, Matt, thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate it very much. Kathi, as always, ton of fun. And I know you'll miss me when I'm gone, but I'll be back. So, and for those out there, selling the dream, you build these businesses over a long period of time. You can't start soon enough to think about what you're going to do with them when you get to that point where it really makes sense to look at some alternatives. So thanks for being here, and we'll be back again sometime soon.
Thank you for listening to the Selling the Dream podcast, starring Doug Howard and Kathi Fleck. Both Doug and Kathi have built and sold successful businesses and hope this podcast will help other small business owners do the same. Tune in every week to hear more tips for increasing the value of your company so you get the highest return for your years of hard work when it comes time to sell or transition your business. Can't wait till next week? Check out our website for more information at www.growththemes.com.